Good afternoon and welcome to IT Governance Strategies and Structures to Keep Your House in Order, a webinar tweet chat combo from healthsystemcio.com. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. My name is Anthony Guerra. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of healthsystemcio.com, and I'll be your moderator today. We are having a tweet chat that is simultaneous to this event being hosted by our Managing Editor and Director of Social Media, Kate Gamble. You can participate in a separate browser or on your phone by using the hashtag HSCIOchat, or you can just simply view the tweet chat in the media viewer panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll also be using the Q&A panel today. If you have questions that occur to you, you can send them in at any time in the Q&A panel, the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and leave the default set to all panelists. We'll be taking them later in the program. And you can access the deck by using the URL on your screen. It's at the bottom of some of our slides, and it's being sent out in the chat box. So you see how we're going to spend our time today. We're going to have our featured presentation from Chuck Podesta, CIO at UC Irvine Health, and then we'll have our Q&A. So without further delay, I'm going to turn it over to one of our regular speakers, Mr. Chuck Podesta. Chuck, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much, Anthony, and thanks to all of you, again, taking time out of your busy schedule. Hopefully I will be able to give you enough information that you can glean one or two things from this and, you know, put it into practice. Actually, the deck that you're going to see is you know, I'll start at a high level, but I do have a lot of detail, a lot of material that we actually use here at UC Irvine Health. So this is real-life stuff that you're going to see. Again, if I breeze through some of the slides, you'll have access to this, you know, certainly after this presentation, and you can always feel free to track me down if you have any questions or you want to access further content on what we're doing. We're happy to help our colleagues on IT governance. So, you know, as you know, IT governance has many shapes and sizes and colors and different ways of doing it. So this is UC Irvine's way, and it's a way that I've done. You know, I've been at this for quite a few years, and I've instituted this kind of process at multiple organizations and tweaked it as I've gone along. But it seems like it, you know, I've got it to a point now where it works pretty well. So hopefully you will agree. So I'm going to click to the next slide and really define what the problem is. And these are, when I go into a new organization, these are that doesn't have IT governance. These are the things that I see happening, you know, within the organization, or poor IT governance, either one. So the first thing is, you know, can't define the business value generated by IT. So there's no real linking of the strategic plan, the organization's strategic plan, to the IT strategic plan, and then operationalizing that IT strategic plan through strong IT governance. And see that really in a lot of organizations. You might be struggling with it in yours, and strong IT governance can certainly help with that. Can't address the changing goals of the organization. That's, you know, never more prevalent than today. You know, with value-based care and ACA and all those things, it was definitely a lot of changing goals. But now, with the new administration, there's a lot of questions, concerns as to where we're going with healthcare. So it's going to be really important to, you know, understand the business strategies as they change, and then define the IT enablers to enable those business strategies going forward. So strong IT governance is needed there. And then what I see in a lot of organizations, and I've been through this myself, is IT making decisions about IT. And that's actually kind of a comfortable place to be sometimes. So, you know, I've been a CIO. It's kind of nice to have that control. You have the knowledge of the organization. You kind of know what everybody is looking for. You have ways you've created relationships with people so that you can, you know, figure out maybe the priorities across the organization and try to keep the lid on things and then move the organization forward. But it's really not the right thing for the organization, having the decisions made by, you know, just the CIO or you know, the IT leadership within the organization. What I see happens in those organizations is that a lot of times the users or the customers kind of get lazy about their role within the IT projects and IT implementations and rely on IT to tell them what to do. And again, you know, from the standpoint of where the organization needs to go, you need everybody involved in moving the information technology forward, and not just the IT organization. So, you know, if you're in that situation, if you're a CIO or leadership in IT and you see your organization making the decisions about IT, it's time to really open that up and get a solid multidisciplinary IT governance in place. So really the solution to those particular problems, which, you know, eventually will cause your organization not to perform at the highest level, is you need to create that governance framework. And again, it aligns the IT with the business objectives, and that's critical. You have to include the key business stakeholders. So depending on the level of IT governance, the various committees that you're going to put in place, you need that multidisciplinary stakeholder from all different parts of the organization. You also, from the leadership of that group, you want to make sure IT is in a support in all the various committees that you create, not in the lead. Again, it gets back to that bullet point of that I had on the previous slide about IT, you know, directing the organization. You really want to be an enabler and a support for that. So, for example, at our IT governance, the chief nursing officer and the chief medical officer are co-sponsors, you know, of that particular IT governance group here. I've seen, you know, other groups where you have the CEO involved, and that's great as well. Just depends on your organization and your CEO and how much detail they want to get into as well. But as long as you have like a chief medical officer, CNO, somebody like that at the high level chairing these meetings, that's important for the organization to see. You want to create a governance process with short decision-making cycles. That's huge. You know, I know you probably, maybe your organization has IT governance process now that everything gets bogged down because everything has to go through IT governance before it's approved, and they only meet once every month or once every 2 months, so it takes forever to get things done. And that's not what IT governance is about. So you want to make something that's agile and nimble. And then IT governance, and again, this is really important, it evaluates, directs, and monitors. It does, you don't see the word manage. So the IT governance does not manage the IT organization or the IT projects that are approved through the governance process. Again, that's all part of the IT organization. So you need a clear delineation that IT governance is much more strategic in, you know, evaluating the initiatives based on strategy, you know, directing the IT organization on which projects we should be working on, and then monitoring the, you know, how we're doing, both from a budget, on time, scope, and you know, certainly return on investment as well. And the benefits, are we achieving those benefits? And that's where a solid IT governance comes in. So a couple of ways before I get forward, it's not a roadblock to getting things done. So that's really important. I've seen that in a lot of organizations where it just becomes a complete roadblock to control, you know, capital spend, and just, you know, there's more no's coming out of it than yeses. And that's not what it is. It shouldn't be that type of roadblock. Yes, they need to be involved in approving capital projects, especially large ones. But again, it's as long as you're coming forward with the benefits and the ROI and the importance of how it ties to business strategy, you know, these things should move through IT governance and not be held up. So a couple of pictures that I've got here that will help, I think, and again, this is IT governance versus IT management. And I see a lot of, this is where it gets blurred sometimes, where you, on the left side, you have governance, and you can see what we talked about already. It sets direction, you know, helps prioritize and decides on the various major initiatives, and monitors, you know, the overall performance. And again, it aligns with the mission and vision of the organization and the strategic plan of the organization. And that's governance. And you can see on the management side, we're in IT, we're responsible for executing and operating on that mission and vision and on the strategies as determined by the IT governance. And, you know, our roles are to, you know, make sure that, you know, as we implement, it's based on that guidance. And governance isn't telling IT management exactly how to implement the project or what to do, or it's not micromanaging the IT function. And that's what I've seen in some organization where it crosses the boundary a little bit too much, where the governance starts to micromanage IT, and that's not its role. Just like a board of directors doesn't manage the operations of a healthcare organization, they stay at the strategic level. IT governance should do the same. And this happens to be a slide from ISACA, which is the Information Security Audit Association that's out there. So I thought it was a real nice one to be able to include in this to give you an idea of where that split should occur. Another way to look at it, and this is actually our framework at UC Irvine Health. So we have the organization strategic plan. Of course, we're involved in creating that and helping the organization. That's multidisciplinary. Usually the CEO is tasked with organizing that. Out of that comes that IT strategic plan, and we work closely. You can see the arrows going back and forth with what we call our Executive Governance Committee. And that is our strategic committee, our highest level committee. Again, it's a CMO, CNO led chair of the committee. You can see on the right side, it's medical center, research, school of medicine, stakeholders. So it's really across all of our organizations that we impact. And that's the high level. Then we have another group, and to me, this is where it's really important. You need a functional governance as part of IT governance, because you can imagine if everything came up to the Executive Governance Committee, whether it was a small capital project or an enhancement request to your EHR, and that committee is meeting once a month or twice a month. You're just not going to get anywhere. It's going to take forever, unless your meetings are 3 or 4 hours long, which is not what I would recommend for an executive governance committee. So they provide more executive oversight. With a functional governance, as you'll see, we have a clinical committee. Under that is the research. We've got data governance within that group as well. Then you have your HR finance. That's kind of your general finance group, and then the revenue cycle committee, so which covers, and again, you have the medical center, research, school of medicine, and this is where most of the work gets done. This is where you're changing, you've got something going on with the EHR, maybe an upgrade you're planning. That goes into the clinical committee. Something on the revenue cycle, big changes you're making there, go through the revenue cycle committee, and most of the time, it's voted on there, it's agreed to or denied, and that's kind of where it ends. It goes back into IS to implement whatever that enhancement or change is. So there's a very close connection between IT and the functional governance. Most of the work, I'd say 80% of the work gets done there. They meet more frequently, typically, than the Executive Governance Committee. And, without that, again, I think you really get bogged down in the governance process. This group is also made up of lower level, VP, director level people that are closer to the operations. There might be even some managers involved in there, potentially some work groups that are involved in each of these groups. You can really kind of make it into what you want it to be. But the important thing is you want a lot of the work of the organization to get done between the IT and these groups. And that's where, when I talk about quick decision-making, being nimble, that's where you want that to occur. And you can see the bottom piece of the management process itself within the IT. This is where your PMO comes in. So an IT organization without a PMO has a very difficult time in creating and supporting strong IT governance. Because you can imagine as these projects come out of these committees, if you don't have a way of managing them, managing your portfolio, going forward, educating these committees on capacity planning, how many projects you can actually work on, what a project is actually defined as, what's the intake process for a project. These committees, struggle with getting the work done and working with IT without a strong PMO. So you need to have that linked into the process. So this is pretty much what our framework looks like. Just an example of our executive governance charter. This is really important when you kick these off or you're going to revise yours. You know, what is the purpose of the group? And you can see for us it's greater than, the big thing here is, you know, everything is handled at those functional groups, but if it's greater than $500,000 and, you know, kind of links to the strategic business plan, we deal with it at the governance committee. Now, the cool thing about it is that the stakeholder has to come with IT. So it's not IT presenting the project. It's IT presenting with whoever the business stakeholder is that's looking to get something approved that's greater than $500,000. Now, this would be most likely outside of the normal capital budgeting process because, you know, executive IT governance is involved in approving that each year. So if it's greater than $500,000 but it's already been approved, you don't really need to go through that process again. You've already done that vetting. But if, you know, these are more the one-offs that come up during the year, we just arbitrarily pick this number. You can go lower, you can go higher. It just depends on, you know, the size of your organization and, you know, what your tolerance is for risk as well. You can see the membership, the responsibilities, and that's just a sample. There's more than what we have listed there, but again, it's that greater than $500,000 level. A lot of tracking and monitoring is done by the executive governance committee. You know, policies and procedures, big ones, you know, maybe around IT security might come up through here for review and approval before they go on to other parts of the organization. Again, the technology planning, strategic planning, the executive governance is a great partner in that. That's a iterative process that we go back and forth with them on a regular basis because it's always your IT strategic plan is always changing, you know, based on the needs of the organization. So, and then monthly or as needed, we meet monthly, but we can also, if we got a lot of things going on, you know, call a special meeting and try to get as many people as we can to that and deal with whatever we're dealing with. So that's just an example. This is a functional one, so this is a clinical committee and research is underneath it. So I've included that on there. You can see when we get to the responsibilities, well, the membership you can see is, you know, it's operational, clinical and operational leadership representing certain areas. We have them deal with, you know, less than $250,000 requests. You know, so they can handle that within the functional committee. You know, they ensure the regulatory requirements. We keep that at that level. You know, transformation activities that are going on within your organization. You may have a lot of, you know, Six Sigma projects and things like that. We want those to be managed at the functional level. You know, monitoring the project's progress, you know, closely with our PMO, critical issues you can see, and then also, you know, bounce things up to the Executive Governance Committee. There is a time where they review something and they just can't decide. And it's kind of out of their scope, and they just feel like they need the Executive Governance Committee to make the call on whether it should be done or not done. And so occasionally we get something bounced up to the Executive Governance Committee for approval. And but those are few and far between. You just hope you get the right people on here from the operational areas that they have the authority to make decisions. So we have that monthly as well. It's usually a pretty full agenda dealing with enhancements, requests, and things like that. Priority of projects, you know, within their areas. The nice thing about it is when you talk about capacity planning, you may have, you know, 5 projects in the ambulatory area and 4 projects in the inpatient area, but you can only do, you know, 5 of the 9 that are approved. And so ambulatory and the inpatient operations group, they've really got to start looking at, you know, what's best for the organization and possibly give up their #1 priority because the #1 priority in another area is more important to the organization. Now that takes time, you know, for them to get into that mode because they're focused on their departments typically. But again, you've got the Executive Governance Committee as a tiebreaker on any of this stuff. So the other thing you need to have is some way to vet this stuff and look at this stuff to give the committees, especially the functional committees, a way to approve or deny. And again, we look at complexity of the, and you can see that on the right side. You know, it's really based on number of hours and costs. And, you know, high complexity is greater than 80 hours, greater than one team involved, and greater than $50,000. So, you know, you have to meet these certain levels, and then you can see 1, 2, and 3 is approved to proceed, 2 complete if we have the capacity, and 3 is deferred or denied. And then on the left side, you can see the urgency. So in this particular committee, anything high would be no other option available in the EMR, patient safety, organization goal, things like that. And then low would be, you know, some individual request that's being made, other alternatives that exist in the EMR. So you know, there's ways to combine these into grids and give the committee, you know, different views. And this is where IT comes in that really help vet these projects, because there's no way the complexity can't really be done by the functional group. You know, IT has to really vet the project and understand it and come back, you know, with that complexity. And then the operational group handles more of the urgency side of it. We also use a thing called SVAR, and you're probably familiar with this. This has to be a real, this was, I don't know, a year or two ago, looking at 3D images, Curry 7 SVAR, so it's situation, background, assessment, and recommendation. We're actually using this in our EPIC project right now. We use it for really a lot of the big projects. So you can see here's the situation, we've got the background, we get the assessment, and then the recommendation. A lot of this work is done, you know, by the operational side. This is where they come in. They really need to define, you know, the role of this this particular project and how it meets, you know, maybe the business objectives in the organization or the organization in general. You know, IT certainly gets involved as well in this, making sure it's the right technology. There could be an RFP and you know, many vendors being looked at, you know, things like that. But everything is laid out in here, and then you get a recommendation that ends up going to that functional group. Hopefully they can, depending on the cost, they will approve. But if it's, you know, like I said, greater than $500,000, it would go up to that our executive governance, and then you know, this SBAR approach would be used at the executive governance as well, with the stakeholders present and, you know, presenting their case. This happens to be a scorecard, just an example of how we did the prioritization. You can see the complexity, the urgency scorecard, the, you know, level of effort on the left side, the impact, and then the strategic themes and goals alignment. That's where we align to the strategic plan if we need to. Find is a product that it allows us to better manage our physician data across the system. We actually purchased this product a while back. This happened to be the scorecard that got us to the approval point that came out of the functional, one of the functional committees, I think the clinical committee. But just an example, I won't get into it in detail, but these are the types of things that, you know, from a documentation perspective, why it was approved, how it was approved, what it impacts. And these are things you can go back on, you know, a year after you implement and say, did we achieve, you know, did it impact the goals as we thought it was going to? And you know, did we stay within the cost? And those sorts of things. So important to have this kind of data that, again, you've got to have a management system within your PMO to really manage this information, both for the committees, but then also, you know, when you're looking at year in review and looking out to the next year, this data is really important to summarize to your customers, you know, what you've done for them, you know, throughout the year. This is a revenue cycle committee chart. I'm not going to spend really any time. Again, you can see the clinical one. This one's a little bit different. Some things are the same type of people involved at the same level, but certainly the responsibilities are different because you're dealing with the revenue cycle. Again, this would be the revenue cycles prioritization matrix. Again, their urgency is different. Patient care certainly is big part, but you can see regulatory compliance or audit findings, something like that would be high for them. You know, potential fine of some point or revenue impact greater than $500,000. Is there FTE savings? So there's a little bit different twist on what they view as high as versus clinical. Again, the governance can make, the executive governance can be the, you know, the tiebreaker on a lot of this stuff. Just project life cycle management, and this is how we educate our functional groups for the most part, and our executive committee as well. But you know, you have step number one. Somebody has an idea, you know, a department, and then you know you always get that within your organization. If somebody says, you know, I have this idea. How do I engage IT? How do I engage the process? So there's a couple of ways you do that. You can do it directly through IT, or you can do it through the functional business or clinical committees that are set up. And you can see in our situation too is we have a project request through a product called ServiceNow, and you know, we track everything through there, and that kind of moves through the process. Then you know, we have a project review and assessment, and that's where the PMO kicks in. You can see the various committees kick in at that point, because it may go through multiple committees depending on the impact. And then, you know, assuming it comes out of there, the execution and implementation of that particular idea or concept, you know, the charter, project charter, the updates, you know, everything, it doesn't matter what project it is, in execution and implementation, it follows each one of these areas. So there are weekly and biweekly meetings. We facilitate meetings or decisions as required, manage project plan, transition plan, for moving from a project to production. Expectations we set on the business unit. You know, they need to be involved certainly in the project. And then we set expectations too on the PMO, you know, monthly reports for that department so they can track the particular initiative along with us. And then, you know, the circle starts again. So I wanted to provide you that. That might be helpful, at least in educating your customers. This is the governance flow, process flow. I won't take you too much through this, but you can see, you know, if there's disagreements, it goes through. You can see with the IT, if you go over to see where they present to the IT Executive Governance Committee, this is a little older. We changed its project over 250. It's actually, if it's over 500, or if we have disagreement between the committees. That's the only time the functional committees will send something to IT Executive Governance. So you can see most of it is taken care of by clinical and research, finance, data quality, and revenue cycle. Those committees really take care of most everything. And you can see the big arrow that goes over to, you know, provide project package to PM for execution, and the PM's assigned and that sort of thing. So it's a fairly simple flow. I mean, there's a lot of lines here, but when you follow it, it's pretty simple for people to understand. This is how we do our project intake overview. Again, it's pretty straightforward. You know, when somebody submits a project request, these are the steps that happen. And again, this is just a kind of a text, you know, outline of the previous slide. So I'll move through that. Guiding principles are a PMO. This is really important. Everything's tracked through ServiceNow. Anything over 80 hours, it's treated as a project. So we have another product in the PMO called Eclipse, although we're probably going to move to ServiceNow, and because it does have a robust tracking system now. Service level agreements are created. You know, we enter all of our time against everything that we do, all of our people, so we know who's available, not available. We also know who's working on what and how much time they're spending. That's key to a good PMO. We do project-based meetings, customer-faced meetings, monthly meetings occur, senior leadership. We create dashboards on the project and you know, issues, tracked issues, risk concerns, things like that. That's all done, you know, via the PMO, and these are done for every single project. These are the guiding principles for everything that we do. This happens to be a capital project list that comes out of the Eclipse, and these are things that we can review with our executive committee or really anybody else. And you know, these are actually, this is probably from a year or two ago, these are actually capital projects, and we use that kind of green, yellow, red So you can see whether they're on target, if there's issues on the status side, who's the project owner. It's got all the information that you'd want to have. The budget can be tracked in there as well. We haven't loaded that up yet, but we're working on that now. Try to track the budget as well within this instead of a separate project. And that's it. I'm just going to go back quick to one slide here.
Let me take you back, Chuck.
Yeah, I got it right here. There we go.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, I got it. So just to take you back, just to summarize, again, you can see all the, we start at the organizational strategic plan. We've got the executive committee in place, all those functional committees in place, and the linkage to the PMO. And then you can see all the documents, the charters that he had, the ways that we run the projects within IT, the standardization that we've implemented. That's all key to making this chart basically go, and that everybody understands, how this actually works. So I just want to come back to this picture just to hopefully frame it in your mind before we get to the questions phase. So that's it for me, Anthony, and we can take questions.
Very good, Chuck. Thank you so much for that excellent presentation. As Chuck mentioned, go ahead, send your questions in and leave in the Q&A box. Leave the default set to all panelists. First question, Chuck. Who does the PMO report to in your organization?
It reports to me as a CIO. We have a director of the PMO, and she reports directly to me. I think there are a couple of areas within IT that are super important where the CIO, even though you're at a strategic level, you need to be a little bit tactical. And I think it's from the standpoint of the PMO, Chief Information Security Officer. These are key areas in your organization where they are, if something goes wrong there, it's going to impact the IT organization in a critical way, whether it's security or from a PMO perspective. And because the PMO is so important to the functioning IT governance, not only the functional governance but the executive committee, I think it's absolutely imperative that the PMO comes up to the CIO.
Okay, next question. Is a SVAR and Scorecard created for every project? I wasn't clear on when one is used versus the other.
Yes, well, the SVAR is created, and that's for every project over 80 hours. If you saw the guiding principles for the PMO, anything over 80 hours or has, greater than a certain amount of money or created by, the complexity of it is high, we do an SVAR on it. Now that SVAR then goes to the function committee, and then they score off that SVAR. So like the find one that you saw was a find SVAR that then went to the committee. They did the complexity, the urgency analysis on it, then scored it and recommended it for approval. So it's SVAR first, and then to the committee, and then the scoring.
Very good. This governance model that you've got in place at UC Irvine, did you find it when you went there? Is this something that you've developed sort of over your years and then you've put in your system? Tell me about that. Sure.
So I've been here 2.5 years, and when I started, there was no IT governance and there was no PMO. And so to me, that's, we're starting. The nice part about that is I could put my stamp on it. I didn't have to evaluate something that already existed. And so I was able to utilize, things that I've done in the past, tweaked it based on the organization, brought in tools that I was used to using in other organizations, and then developed that IT governance here. During my first year, it was really, by the end of my first year, I had IT governance running and a PMO launched at the same time. And you need to have both of those. You can't have one without the other. For a CIO just starting in an organization, those are the areas that I look at first, because to me it's blocking and tackling, and you really can't move forward with strategic planning and other things that you need to do in the organization until you have those in place.
When you wanted to do that, were there certain people that you had to educate or, to get buy-in from or can you just go in and do it? Or do you have to sort of make sure the CEO's on board and say, here's what I want to do? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You need, you know, as any good CIO knows, you've got to start out with your relationships at the senior level, your CFOs, COOs, CEOs, and develop those relationships. So you do that in the first few months. And then as what I do is I always put kind of a consulting hat on and do a first 60, 90 days, listen and learn, and then come back and say, okay, here's where we are. Here's the strengths of the organization. Here's our opportunities to improve. And kind of do a full presentation to the executive leadership team on why we need IT governance, why we need a PMO, because sometimes there's costs, you know, actually there's always costs associated with doing that. You could be in a mid-budget season, you don't have it in your budget, so you're asking for something new. And you need to get them on board and educate them and the organization as to why this is not just an IT-led initiative, but why it's really important for the organization to get involved. And where I find that it's not so difficult at the executive leadership team, they get it. They understand, you know, linking IT strategy to business strategy and governance. Where I find the functional groups are the hardest ones to put together, because in this organization, the way that the IT pretty much controlled what projects moved forward and the priority, basically told the users or the customers what they were getting, when they were going to get it, and what it was going to look like. So they were not used to being part of that governance process. So it took them a while, but once they understood that they had a say in what we were working on, you know, they jumped on it and grasped it. And then conversely, in our organization, we had to give up some of that control that we were used to. Some of our management team and our staff had to give up that control. But again, once they saw that they were, instead of guessing at the things we should be working on, understood we were working on the things that were driving the organization forward, and also getting praise from our customers for things that were getting done, that changed the whole mentality of the group.
You may have covered this, but was there a C-suite executive you partnered with to design and get buy-in? Anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, the chief medical officer first, and then the chief nursing officer, because I really wanted to make this, you know, we were moving forward with, we knew we were probably going to be changing out our EHR and doing a lot of clinical transformation activities. So when we started out, I wanted to focus the executive governance more on operational transformation and clinical transformation. So, you know, I definitely engaged the chief medical officer and the CNO, and they were totally on board, again, with the direction of the CEO, offered to make, you know, that person the chair, but, you know, with the duties that individual had across the academic medical center, it would have been very difficult. So, but having the CMO and the CNO showed the organization that, you know, we had physician representation at a high level, at leadership level, and, you know, nursing clinical representation at a high level. Then, of course, on the committee itself, you've got your CFO, your COO, and others, you know, throughout the organization. But, you know, you can do it with the COO, you can do it, you know, potentially with the CEO, but you just can't do it with the CIO. We are in support. We, you know, do a lot of the work. We create the process. You know, I meet with the CMO and the CNO before the governance committee, go through the agendas, make sure we're clear on the material. So we're very much in that support role to those leaders, but it's important for the organization to see that it's not IT-led.
Very good. Next question, what perspective can you offer in blending inputs in an academic medical center into governance? Academic has a priority, a project with #1 priority, research has a competing project, clinical has yet another competing project, all draw from the same IT resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that would probably start in a functional group. Again, and those functional groups have research, School of Medicine, and, you know, medical center people on them. Chances are in something like that, they're not going to be able to make the decision, so that would go to the executive governance. And again, the executive governance has those individuals. So, and, you know, you have executive leadership in that executive governance, and their goal and their role is basically to do what's best for the organization as a whole. So you can imagine we'll have some spirited discussions between, research, School of Medicine, and the medical center leadership around those particular priorities. That's where, SVARs come in handy, that type of data, it just helps to define where we should go and how it ties. And ultimately, we always tie back to the strategic plan of the overall organization. And there may be a time where the CEO actually needs to chime in on something if it's that big and that important. But typically, the governance can have those spirited discussions, have potential conflicts, disagreements. But again, with the SVARs, the data, tying back to the strategic plan, typically cooler heads prevail and the right decision is made.
Being an academic teaching institution, do you share IT governance across institutions, academic versus medical center? I think you just said yes. Is that correct?
We do, except for we do not do the down to graduate school. They have a whole different kind of set of strategic plans in that organization. There is another CIO there. This is just the medical side of things, the medical center itself, the School of Medicine, and the clinical research associated with the medical center and School of Medicine.
You have a CMIO, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And
he's on the committee as well. He is on the executive.
Well.
Yeah, he's on the executive committee as well. He's part of the IT support team that we have attending those executive governance committees. He's also part of the clinical functional group as well. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Let's say that you went into a situation that was sort of a blank slate, and you were able to bring in your own system. Let's say you either wind up somewhere, or all of a sudden you realize you're at a place that has some pretty dysfunctional governance that's already set up. What would be the steps you would take, first on getting the correct buy-in, which I think you discussed, but then specifically, what might be some first, second steps you might take to get the house back in order?
Well, what I would do is, assuming, the process that I've described here is towards a best practice. Let's assume that's the case, and I've already put this in place. And I would look at, okay, this is where we need to go. Here's where we are today, and so I would do a gap analysis on that, because you wouldn't want to throw away everything and start over unless it was, just completely dysfunctional, which could be the case. But hopefully there's some things that you can keep that drive you towards that best practice. But the first thing I would do is just break it down. The governance committee, look at the charters, look at the membership. Is it the right charter? Is it the right membership? What are the things, what are the positive aspects of what's happened within their IT governance? What are the negative? What are the opportunities for improvement? Create the gaps, and look at the functional committees. Do the functional committees exist even, or does everything goes up to the governance committee? So very much, just kind of methodically going down through, knowing that the picture you're trying to paint is the one I painted today, and then coming back with that gap analysis. Then again, it's like putting your consultant hat on, going back to executive leadership and saying, okay, here's the things that work. Here's the things, I've done a lot of assessments. I've talked to a lot of people. Here's what we can keep. Here's what's got to change, and this is where we're going. We all agree to that, and once you get that buy-in, then you can just, it's really a project now, an IT governance project that you're going to put in place to improve it. Now, it takes time to do that, to stand up a PMO. If one doesn't exist, you're looking at a good 6 months to stand it up and another 6 months to get it functioning the way it needs to function with buy-in from everybody. So, and IT governance is the same way. It's going to take you, a good 3 or 4 months to set it up, and another, half a year or so to get everybody understanding what their role is and how it works. So, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So that's important to understand as well.
Very good. Just as a final question, does good governance solve all your headaches, or can some difficult individuals break good governance?
They can, but they stick out like a sore thumb, because you've got everybody working towards the same goal and the same process. So if somebody's trying to go around it, trying to do something different, they typically stick out, and we can deal with them. The nice thing I like about the IT governance is, you know, I've got partners now. You know, when IT's driving everything, it's all on you, and you know, that's a tough place to be sometimes. And you know, with governance, I've got a whole team in place that I feel is my team. They're all my peers, and just like I'm trying to help the COO and the CNO and the Chief Ambulatory Officer succeed in their areas, I feel that they're, you know, my partner in helping me succeed in the IT world as well. So you just feel like you're in it together, and it's much more comforting than kind of being out there on a CIO island of your own.
Especially on Valentine's Day, right?
Absolutely. You know, you definitely need a partner on Valentine's Day. Absolutely.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chuck. For everyone, when you close out your WebEx screen today, you'll be taken to a post-event survey. Please take a moment to answer it. Again, I want to thank Chuck for a great, spirited presentation, and I think it's going to prove very valuable to a lot of folks out there. For those of you who hold the CHIME CHCIO certification, attending our webinars gets you 1 CEU. Let CHIME know you were here, and if you've asked us to do so, we will. If you need a certificate of attendance for another CEU program, you can use the final slide in this deck. You'll receive an email when our archive recording has been posted to our YouTube channel. If you'd like us to produce a webinar on the topic of your choice, you can contact Nancy Wilcox for more information, and you can go to our website to view our upcoming schedule. So once again, I want to thank Chuck. I want to thank our attendees. Everybody have a wonderful day.